the bearings were making a lot of noise. I mean, they were grinding more than a teen at a high school dance, so hopefully that's not the case anymore. So we are back at the lawnmower once again. I've just used this thing for the last 1.5 hours cutting the lawn. I only managed to cut the front and the pavement, the verge. It did a wonderful job. Worked well. The new carburetor worked perfectly, flawlessly throughout the whole time. Never cut out once, which is super awesome. And I only managed to cut off 2 fingers while I was emptying the grass box each time. And that's actually like another gripe that I've got at the moment. I had that problem with the last mower and with this mower. I basically do 2 circles around the garden and I've got to empty the grass box. I mean, this is a lot easier than pulling a cord around, but still, you know, that is a little bit irritating. So we're going to have to find a way around that. That said, it is still making a bit of a whining noise. The clutch is working perfectly fine. The clutch and the bearing that we repaired, that's also working perfectly fine. Although the drum, so the drum's got 2 bearings. There's one in the front there, one in the front here on either side. Those are also probably 213 years old. They've probably never been replaced, never been oiled, well, I would imagine, because they are sealed bearings. So I think I'm going to take this thing apart and we're going to see if we can get replacement bearings for it. Hopefully we can. And then maybe it'll run a little bit more quieter, or just maybe the next thing will rear its ugly head and eventually we'll end up with a brand new mower like 17 videos down the line. Anyway, let's get working. So from what I can see, to get to all of these little bearings, basically there is one bearing in there. You can't really see it, and there's one bearing in there. Well, that's a little adjustment block, and the bearing is inside that block. So we have to remove this entire drum. Now, as far as I can see, there's 2 halves to this mower. There's one half over there, one half over there, and they joined with this central type of mounting plate that also holds the motor. So it looks like we can just take off these side bolts, and there's a couple of bolts along the top, and then I'm hoping that this entire section of the mower will come off, and then we'll be able to remove that drum, pull out those bearings, and then check their condition. So I think my suspicion is correct. These bearings are probably shot. If I take the drum and I rock it backwards and forwards, you can actually see it and you can hear it. There's a lot of play in that bearing. Now, there shouldn't be any play at all, as that is a deep groove ball bearing from what it looks like on the outside. And I assume they have worn because I suppose, this is exposed to a lot of damp grass, and the moisture would make its way into the bearing and probably wear it a lot faster than usual. Also, I'm battling to get that nut loose, so ended up having to take these 2 loose on this side, this one and that one. Those came off pretty easily, and now I think this entire front rolling section will be able to slide off so that we can split the right hand side of the frame off the rest of the mower. Oh, that's great. That wasn't very tight. Maybe it's a good thing we're taking this thing apart. I think this is the main support for the drive roller at the back. So I wonder how long that would have been before it rattled loose and worn the hole way bigger than it should be. So I think this thing should come apart now, somewhat. Probably going to end up, jamming one of my 3 fingers that I've got left in here. Yeah, it's definitely loose into there. I wonder if there's not something I'm missing. Oh, maybe it's this little block. We haven't taken that block loose inside here. Tap, tap, tap. Ending up having to use these bloody apprentice spanners because I don't have any imperial size tools. Or I do, I've got very few of them and I don't exactly know where they are. So, just got to make do with what you've got. Oh shit. I can see what I've missed out. There's, of course, come now. You've got the drum cutter, the blade itself here, but then you've also got a blade at the bottom. It's a flat blade, runs along the entire width of the mower, and that has still got one bolt holding it in. Yep, I guess that's what you get for trying to work late in the day. Or after a couple of beers. It is Friday and all. So, man, I just love working on weekends. After much debating with myself, it seems like we have to remove the motor. I just can't get to that bolt underneath there to get the blade support out, and the blade screws in from the bottom, and I don't really want to turn this motor upside down and have all the oil running, well, everywhere basically. So just going to have to whip these covers off, take the center support out, and basically then we've stripped down the entire mower. So pretty much loving life at the moment. Great, that doesn't fit in there either. Nevertheless, we'll shoehorn something in there. Okay, I think we are pretty much ready to take off the motor, this center section here. I don't exactly know what's going to happen. Probably going to end up not coming off so easily. Oh shit, there we go. Oh, my goodness, this thing's full of fuel, damn it. Getting a bit heavy. Okay. Probably should have done that right from the beginning, because now it is a whole lot easier to work on. So this is what I've been battling with. Now that is one of the lower blade supports. There's one that side, and I'll try and show you. Light is not great, but anyway, there's another one in there. Now, I can't get to the one on this other side, which I want to take off. So I'm thinking I'm just going to unbolt that one, and then this thing is kind of going to split in half with bits and pieces hanging off either end. I think I'm just going to take the cheap and easy, well, probably not easy route out and take that bolt loose. This one is actually also fairly loose, so probably is a good thing that I've taken this mower apart. So definitely in need of a fairly good service. There we go, bolt is out. Left-hand thread. Glad I didn't put too much force on that. That could have ended badly, especially since this is actually a plastic here. So, well, it feels like, yeah, it's a plastic here. Got to be careful of that. Cool, so we got the drum out, and well, the bearings are slightly worn. They're not as bad as that clutch bearing was. So we can hear they're quite nice and dry. Well, I wouldn't say nice, but it would actually be a shame to put this thing back together just like it is. So I'm definitely going to replace these bearings. And luckily enough, it's the same bearing as the clutch at the top, 6202. So pretty common size bearing. And both sides look very similar. This one's a little bit more quiet, but if you put a bit of load on it, you can feel it's a little bit rough. So, and that's one way of checking bearings. It doesn't mean that just because you're spinning them or just because they sound good when you're spinning them under no load and they feel smooth, that they're actually good. You actually need to put the bearing under some load, and then you'll feel if the race is running smooth or rough or that type of thing. Again, if any of you guys know any different in the comments, let us know. It's always nice to hear from you guys. Of course, I'm doing the right thing here and using my hands to hold the bearing puller because I don't have the right size puller. And I've kind of jimmy rigged it together, so don't do this at home, kids. Always wear your safety glasses. There we go, it's off. Hopefully the other side comes off just as easy. This one is a whole lot tighter, so I'm not too sure. And there's also a flange at the back here, so I can't really grip the bearing. Okay, so it's the outer race cut through, and we definitely won't be using this bearing again. Now, what I probably should do is cut the other side, because I can see I'm going to stab myself. So I'll just continue here with a screwdriver. It's normally the right thing to do, I suppose. There we go, it's somewhat coming off. Got your safety glasses on. If you don't, just look away from the screen, just so that nothing hits you in the face. Ah, there we go. Yeah, this bearing has seen better days, should I say. Here's the little inner race with the ball bearings. Now these ball bearings are probably going to be flying. Oh, there's one. All over the place. Yep. Okay, those are off. Now we need to try and cut this piece without cutting this flange. You see there's a flange here, so we need to try and cut the inner race without cutting the flange, preferably. Don't know how easy that's going to be, but we'll try, and without cutting the shaft. So sometimes what you can do is a little trick. Once you don't have to cut all the way through, you can use a chisel. Now, of course, I don't have a chisel, so we'll use a screwdriver. But you can take that and then you hammer on it, and then, you hammer on top of the screwdriver, and then it sometimes cracks this inner race. But now I haven't cut this through enough, but just thought I'd share that with you guys. There we go. Not sure if you heard that little click or crack, and that was the race letting go. Let's see if we can pry this thing off now. Well, maybe I can actually show you that little trick with the chisel. Just hang on. So we're basically going to support the bearing on, say, a vise. It doesn't have to be a vise, it could be anything really. That's the cut mark that we made. We're going to put the chisel into the cut mark, and we just give it a bit of a bang, just like that. And I can actually feel it's broken already. Yeah, you can see the inner race is already loose. Well, okay, you couldn't see it there, but if I stick this back in here, well, if I stick that back in there, just tap it in, there we go, you can see that it's loose, and we should be able to get the shaft out. There we go, shaft is out, just like that. Cool, so I managed to get 2 new bearings this morning. NSK 6202 is the standard bearing, as I said, the same as the clutch size. And these are sealed bearings, so the others were shielded bearings. I think these sealed bearings will work a little bit better. And we are going to, well, I would say normally press them on, but my press is not big enough, mainly because I don't have a press. So we're going to use, like I did last time, a socket, and we're going to just hit it on with I'm going to try with a dead blow hammer this time. But usually when you're pressing on a bearing, you want to do it in a controlled fashion, and you want to press on the inner race if you are pressing it onto the inner bore, or the onto a shaft. And if you are pressing the bearing into a housing, then you want to press on the outer race. So I'm just going to use a bit of a collar, and then a bearing, and then a socket. Okay, and we'll see how easily this goes on. It's going on fairly easily. A little bit further to go though. There we go. I think that is basically it. It looks like it is home. Normally, when a bearing is home, when you're tapping it home, you can, as you're tapping it, you can actually hear once it seats itself. A little bit difficult this time. Maybe there's like 0.5 millimeter left there. Let me just check here. No, I think that is, actually I think that's going to work out nicely. There is a washer behind here, and that washer is now tight. It's not loose anymore, so that means the center of the bearing is pressing up against that washer. Yep, pretty happy with that. So a quick overview of the little repairs I've had to make. Both of the bearing blocks needed a little bit of work. So here's the bearing that came out of it. Now this bearing is definitely worn. You can hear it now. So definitely had to replace those. And the bearing blocks are actually slightly worn as well. Now you might not be able to see this, but I can actually feel it. And the bearing should definitely not just be able to slip in and out like that. Both of these blocks are worn, and I measured the difference there of about 0.3 millimeters. So I've just cut out some shim stock. That one's already in there. We're going to pop it in just like that, and then the bearing will nicely press fit into that bearing block. Now, I didn't have any shim stock on hand, so while I was thinking like, where can I get this stuff from, while I was drinking a beer, and then, well, I thought, well, let me just cut up the can, and I'll use a bit of the can, and it's actually the perfect size. Don't know how well this is going to work as shim stock. Well, it'll work well, but I don't know how long it's going to last. I assume it'll last long enough for these bearings to wear out. So yeah, that's just a little tip or trick that you can use. Another repair I had to do to the side plate is over here. You can see I've already filed it all nice and flat. Now this had a groove worn into it from the drive roller over time, just wearing into the aluminium or whatever material this is, magnesium mix. So ended up just filing that out, and then also filing out a washer. Now that fits nicely on there. It brings it back up to the original level that it was at, and also this washer is a lot harder than what this aluminium material is going to be here. So should last quite long. Definitely going to wear out the drive roller now. So looking forward to repairing that a couple of years down the line. Also ended up putting some lipstick on a pig here. Ended up spraying up the little mounting plate that holds the cutting blade, the lower cutting blade. I don't really feel like having to remake this thing in a couple of years when it's rusted to pieces. Also just sprayed up the two little support shafts, and the bearings on the cutting drum. Those have both been pressed on. Also had to make another little bushing, I suppose. Made that out of aluminium because the last one out of steel, or it was like, looked like a cast type of bushing that was broken. And lastly, the plate on the right hand side of the mower has already been repaired. So you can see over here it has been filed flat. Now there was a ball over here left from welding. This little edge or section was welded back on, and underneath here is where the blade guard goes, the lower blade guard. And yeah, this bolt basically just goes in there. We'll probably end up putting a flat washer on there as well, but it's definitely going to seat a lot better now. So I've pretty much cleaned all of the parts now, gave them a basic bath with some soapy water. They all look really nice. I must say that there was a lot of debris and old mud and grass clippings stuck onto this drum cutter. I think that's going to run a lot smoother now. It's not going to be out of balance. So all of that stuff is cleaned. Also the motor, we still need to actually clean the motor, but the motor plate and the drum and that front roller has been cleaned. It's over there. And basically all we need to do now is to throw this thing back together and see if it works. So while I was putting this whole nut together here, this little gear that drives the main drive wheel drum, I saw there was a bit of a hole filled with, I suppose you could call it mud or dried up ground, and upon digging that out, it looks like it goes through to these bearings. So I'm guessing that this hole once upon a time had a pipe in it, and the pipe sticks out the top over here. You probably like dribble oil in there over time, and then it comes out, you know, this side and the other side of this little bushing. So pretty glad I found that. Just stuck a piece of 6mm Festo hose in there, and now we're ready to install the little drive cog back in. Not too sure if we're supposed to put grease on here. My initial thoughts are not, because that turns into grinding paste over time. So just going against that, I've put a very, very small amount of grease on there, and we'll dribble some oil down here over time and then see what happens. I mean, if it wears, it can't really wear more than what it has already. Cool, so everything is back together. We've got the new bearings installed on the drum itself, all back together, ready to cut. Maybe if you are quite astute, you can bring your face balls in a little bit closer. You can see I have actually cut with this thing before. I did test it out. I was in a rush to cut the grass, so this is not the first time I'm cutting after I've replaced the bearings. We've done some basic adjustment. I think it still needs some adjustment because it's still cutting lines in the grass. I'm not too worried because we've got the vintage Victor 1042 lawn tractor that I've been using. So I was going to say this is a week later, and then I went to go look when I posted the previous video. It was 10 weeks ago. Wow, time flies. Anyway, I thought I'd show you guys that this is back together and it is cutting pretty damn well. We'll probably pack it away after this. Probably not actually, because we can't get the lawn tractor to the backyard, so we'll use this in the back. But nevertheless, the main goal of this was to get it cutting again pretty reliably, and the drum, the bearings were making a lot of noise. I mean, they were grinding more than a teen at a high school dance. So hopefully that's not the case anymore, and you know, we've made some progress. Let's see if it cuts. As we can see, the previous repairs have worked pretty damn well. It started from cold, idling, cutting along. Yeah, glad to see that it's not time wasted. Just gotta let it warm up a little bit. I think it's probably good practice. Look, so off the bat, it's a hell of a lot quieter than what it was. The drum is spinning now, and yeah, it's not giving that whole grinding, grating noise, which, yeah, pretty happy with that. So the grass is now cut and it is time for a cold beer. I'm sure you can agree. Pretty happy with the way this thing has turned out so far. It seems to be cutting well. As I mentioned, we do need to adjust the blade. We'll leave that for another video sometime, probably in the next 10 weeks or so. For now, if you found the video useful or entertaining at least, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help me out on the channel. Also, there are a couple of other videos, maybe you've seen them, maybe you haven't, about a vintage Victor 1042 ride-on lawn tractor. I mentioned it earlier. We are restoring that. So I think there's 4 videos out already. Of course, there will be more in the future. And that new project that I introduced in the last episode, here it is in the background. Here's the steering wheel. It's got 4 fat-ass wheels, a 465cc 4-stroke engine, 7-speed sequential gearbox, and the bumper bar. In case you missed that, there will be a link in the description. There'll be a card maybe up on screen somewhere, I don't know. Let's see if I remember to put it in. Thanks for watching. And my name is Grant Burton. This is the Burton Builds Garage, and you guys will see me in the next episode. Cheers.